incredible. Let's just get started. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about 6 more incredible sites about that come from the world of UI design but are technically masterpieces because they will take elements that you never thought would integrate so well in web design, and I know what I'm talking about here today. I have seen these before and they'll just surprise you. They will honestly blow your mind. Let's just get started. Like this video, make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, because if you haven't yet, and we've been live streaming for so long, talking about UI design for so long, you're wasting your time. Let's just get started. The first site that I want to talk about, because obviously sites is all I want to talk about now. Wow, I cannot get this stream started. This is embarrassing. I think it just came back. Did it come back? This is very weird. I think it did. Okay, the first site that I want to talk about is Lion Beaton, and before I get started, I do want to address a little bit of the backlash that comes with these streams. So sometimes I will go out of my way, talk very critically about certain elements, and then it becomes a whole concept of she must hate the sites, and that essentially is not true, and I want to get that off my brain before I say anything else, because at some point you have to think about things in terms of, I am still there for web design. Maybe some of my criticism comes from a genuine place of this is the wrong way of doing things, and maybe that shouldn't be happening. I think I'll just leave it at this point, leave the whole topic that I was into right before this stream started, but I do think there is a little bit of misjudgment over what I'm looking at, why I'm saying the things I'm saying. But let's just get started with today's site. This is Lion Beaton, and it uses a bunch of elements that you'd think are 3D but are actually video, and I think this is the perfect example of how you can take video, transform a site with it completely, and then sit in the world of, wow, everyone thinks this is 3D, and have it be looking a little bit better than it actually is, which is incredible, and I'm all for it. And at some point, yes, 3D did go in to building something like this. So right off the bat, you have seen, and I have seen, and everyone has seen 100 different sites with videos in the background, with images in the background, and this specific site does take that concept and does a little bit of a better job with it. They've just put in, as soon as you reload the site, they've basically put in this whole entire 3D video, taken it as a render, taken it out to MP4, and just put it in the background. And I think for the first part, they had me stunned, which is a great idea if stunning people is what you want to do. Again, they take the old late 2024 concept of taking the name of the brand, putting it in the footer. They put it in the header, which is a nice change from what things usually are. You still have your navigation, but it's a little bit offset. Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit offset. Instead of having it be in a dainty little corner in one corner of the universe, they've just put it right here where you can see it. But it's a little bit too small, but also it's showing you the point that it needs to show. So over and over, cannot complain. And then you get to see their different projects, and as soon as you hover over them, you get to see an image preview of everything that's going on in the background. Now I do personally wish they'd had either a cursor hijack or something that actually dictated the need to hover over one of these, because it's just really easy to have that be something that gets missed, especially if your cursor is on the left or right. I think it's really easy for a bunch of people to make the same mistake over and over again. Then you get to the shop now section, because apparently that is what people want to do. So now you have this giant title taking up the space where it needs to take space, and the description being a really small font size, and I think it made me angry as soon as we got started, because font size 9 pixels is something that we just had left behind in 2012's Microsoft Word, and the fact that it even makes a comeback here is very annoying to me, deeply hurtful. And on the positive side of things, you do get a lot of white space, you do get the ability to move around and have some breathing room with the actual site, and the site in itself tries to take the concept of white minimalism and the old 2023 concept of white minimalism and kind of run with it, which is absolutely incredible. But also now we come to the part which I honestly thought deserved to be the hero section of this entire site, regardless of its positioning, regardless of the fact that it doesn't have a lot of motion video in it. And I think the main reason why would be because you take very, very solid black lines either in the navigation bar or even in the entirety of the actual content itself, and you let that be the hero, which is honestly incredible. You let it shine, and you let it be exactly where it needs to be. Another incredible concept that I want to mention here is, not only did they take fonts, not only did they increase the size of fonts, they've also maintained that typography as consistently as you can hope for, and they've kind of maintained the consistency with it. Because right here, when you make fonts this big, now you're expecting things to kind of simmer down, because this is where the grand old thing starts from. So the fact that they've taken those exact font sizes, retained it, is not only the basic hierarchy of how things should be, but it's also the fact that you don't get to see it so often now. Speaking of things you don't get to see very often, parallax. Yes, it is back here again, and I think this is one of those little things where you just ignore the fact that parallax even exists completely. But if you just look really carefully, if you squint hard enough, and I know I'm asking you to squint hard enough at a site, but what can you do? If you squint hard enough, you will actually notice the fact that they've taken very, very subtle hints of parallax and made them so subtle that you won't even realize how they're elevating your experience. So as soon as you start over here, you see these 4 cards kind of being offset in their kind of ladder hierarchy, and when you start scrolling above, when they do come into view, when they are the center of everything that's going on, they're basically lined up together, and then as soon as you start to scroll off, the ladder basically goes in the other direction. But this is where things start to get even more interesting. You have an image, this black image, in the bottom of our next section, and we're kind of hoping that it comes into view next. So instead of just letting it be exactly where it is, they've kind of implemented the text versus the image and parallaxed it apart, made the scroll speeds very, very different. So right now you see the image cutting S at its half height, and as soon as you start to scroll, the image actually kind of goes down. So that's very, very visible when you start to look for parallax and you start to look for the little edges. But it's one of those little things that you would never notice by your own, and yet it's one of the things that's driving this ship forward. So that's just one of the cool little concepts that I had to mention, even if you didn't want to hear about it. The next interesting part about this entire site is when they do come into great descriptions, because as soon as we got started with this site, I mentioned the fact that they have very, very small font sizes, which is annoying to some degree because we had left behind those really small font sizes in 2012. Now you come into a world where there is some description and it needs reading, and to make that happen in real time, they've increased the font size, let you take up the space that you need to take up to read something like this. I would have appreciated a little bit of a highlight on the text, because this paragraph usually will clump together on its own and people wouldn't want to go into it unless they're really the biggest fan of the entire brand. But nevertheless, it's fine. It's fine. It's not the worst thing in the world. Certainly not the best thing, but cannot complain considering absolutely everything we see in the wild world of the web nowadays. And as I'm talking about the wild world of the web, you also get to see the black outline that we talked about as a highlight come back in here as a separator for the sections, as something that really sets you apart. But also you get to see a lot of white space, again retained. I am really happy that they've managed to keep white space exactly where it needs to be. Let there be a lot of space where things need to be. And I would like to add here, parallax seems like a concept that they'd only implement in images, but it's not the case. When you start to scroll above, the scroll speed of this section in itself kind of increases. So when you start to scroll down, the scroll speed of this section goes faster, and that happens because not only are they building out scroll speeds differently, they're also taking into consideration where your cursor is as a user, and they're trying to get speeds to change according to that. But also, my initial piece of anger over the first hero section that we talked about, and I'm going to scroll above, and not having any direction, even a cursor hijack over hover these, is returning once again as a recurring theme. I had no idea you could hover over any one of these and be able to see these huge titles and huge descriptions and a really, really pretty, modern, incredible looking layout, and yet you can do that, and sometimes it's really easy to ignore. So I think not having enough direction, even the slightest hint that these Easter eggs are kind of hidden here, becomes a kind of negative point, because we are not playing treasure hunt here. The things that need to be shown are needing to be shown, and there is no second idea of anything else that could be done. The scroll speed, once again, the scroll speed for this little title also changes as soon as you start to scroll. This will go faster if you kind of increase the scroll speed, and I would encourage you to try this out because it's really hard to explain with words. And then we get to see a comeback of the old project section revolution that came in, and I'm trying to say old, but it's also very new, but I've seen a bunch of them, so it's old in my eyes. The revolution that came in about taking these projects, taking their names, putting them in a line, and we've seen these consistently in the last 5 days. They happen over and over again, consistently have one image that kind of takes up the entirety of the space, puts up its performance, becomes big when you're trying to hover over any one of these projects, and then it ultimately takes up its entirety on its own. I think they've done a better job with, even if they've not shown you're supposed to hover over it, they've done a better job at making this happen, because when it's taking the entirety of the width, it's really hard to escape from without hovering over at least one of these. But also it's really hard to pick apart the fact that this would even happen if they tried to kind of constrict it down, make it less wide, and that is definitely something that bugs me over here. The next thing that we're talking about is the newsletter, and yet the comeback of the world of parallax, because we talked about parallax happening in a bunch of places, and then they took the exact same parallax, call it consistency, and made an entire kind of newsletter section out of it. Most newsletter sections will just give you a plain weird banner, fill out this form and you will get access to our special newsletter. I think they do a much better job at getting your attention to the newsletter by putting like 3 different images, all different scroll speeds, everything a little bit asynchronous, and letting it play out the way it needs to. And I've done this exact layout before with the housefly UI that we did. It was an incredible live stream, and it happened a while ago, and we've actually made this happen, so you can check it out in the archives of the live streams of this channel, because this is deeply reminiscent. And again, you get to the product section, and I am once again genuinely happy that they've retained the font size and they've retained the way the fonts were with this one, because I was really disappointed by the small font sizes, and I was really kind of getting into the headspace where they will not make these any bigger, because sometimes, and this is such a rising trend, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with this, sometimes you see a kind of inclination of people towards small font sizes, and when that starts to happen, they'll just forget large font sizes. Sometimes on some sites you'll just see huge font sizes, and then that's the only thing that they're following. I like the fact that they actually have some range, and they're able to maintain that range, so you have a title that's ginormous, but you also have a kind of small link which takes up a really small text space, and the fact that they have range makes me be okay with the element of this is a really small font size. I think that's just here to be mentioned. But also, this really small font size thing has me raising concerns over what is the accessibility now, because accessibility, WCAG, we have a video coming on it as well, talks about you need to have a certain font size in ratio to different font sizes just to be able to maintain things, and when that is not happening, I do wonder if this would be very accessible. So I think that's something that does not leave my brain. But also, they've done a simple Vento grid, and they've managed to do it very well, and they've taken a couple of elements, put text there, made it all look very pretty, very easy, basic minimalism as a concept, and they've actually done a very good job at making this entire thing happen. And now that we're finally at the footer, I do want to point out, we started with a hero section that had the brand name right there at the top in caps, and then they end the footer very elegantly with the same exact brand name, this time instead of caps, they've used small case, which is incredible because you're driving the point back home, completing the full circle, and every single element that needed to be here in the footer is also present. And they've taken the border black offset theme and tried to make the footer gravitate towards the left, but also it's not the worst thing in the world, and it's definitely very interesting. So with that said, lie on beat on, near perfect site. The only thing that did bug me here majorly was the fact that there was no direction of you need to hover over some of these elements because they have incredible things happening in the background. And also sometimes this really small font sizes got me bugging because we don't know if these are completely accessible yet, because to some vision disabilities, especially on the web, you need to be a little bit careful over this kind of font size difference, because when a person comes in looking at a title this big, this small font size automatically gets ignored, and that's really bad for accessibility unless you're actually zooming in with your eyes out. So over and over, this is a 9 out of 10 site. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments, but also pretty good. The next site that I want to talk about is askphil.com. I have no idea what this site does. I am really hoping it does something good, because if it doesn't, I will be disappointed. Let's get started. The first thing that hits you in your face as soon as you get started is, wow, this is a really beautiful Euro section. And the only reason I'm saying that is because white space doesn't always have to be white. It is negative space or space in any color, which just is area where content isn't heavily present, and it lets your content breathe. And I think the fact that they've let there be so much white space really regulates the rest of the content, really does make you go, wow, this looks incredible, even if the fonts that they've used aren't particularly special. I believe these are either inter, especially all of these menu and contact and little description fonts, all of these are very basic inter. With the title as well, I think they've taken the highest, most weightiest parts of inter and made it stand out, but they've taken the most basic font, and that still looks good, and it still passes without suspicion and without anyone coming and saying your typography is bad, because white space will take away so many other concerns, even if they continue to exist so easily, and you will not believe how effective it is that I have to keep on coming here live talking about white space. And after that's done, you get to see 4 different cards, all very pretty, and you can kind of shuffle around with them, which kind of makes for an incredible journey. I like the fact that they've put this Easter egg in, and it's genuinely just a little bit more intuitive than the hover effects that we had in the last site, which is also nice, because you can work with something like this on an Easter egg basis, but also it doesn't have to be the hinge that your entire content being visible is dependent on. The last site, the problem with it was you had these hover effects, but your entire content's visibility of the projects depended on the user discovering them. I would much prefer having Easter eggs like this, where even if you don't get to see all of these images on their own, you don't really lose out much of the content, which is the way of doing Easter eggs, in my opinion. And then you get again, I'm starting to remember the Housefly UI. I am starting to remember the UI that we did last year, and this is really incredible, because we saw this happen in another section on the last site. 4 different elements, all different scroll speeds. I think this has slightly different scroll speeds, although it might not, but I think the fact that it does have scroll speeds, it does have that difference, because you can kind of hover over them with your cursor. This one is much more cursor dependent. The last parallax was not very cursor dependent, but this time it is, and yet it does give you a little bit of motion, makes things a little bit more interesting, especially when you're taking one central piece of text and having 4 different visual elements across the screen, and this does a very good job with that UI. I like the fact that they've taken their navigation and made it very sticky and made it very transparent, and you're able to stick with the contact and the menu, because call to action always needs to be there. So again, that's just one good thing that they're doing in my eyes. But also clients, wow, this once again is a testament to how things would work really well, just because they've gotten their white space right. Because it is so easy to just sit here and forget the fact that they don't have many fancy fonts working for them, the fact that they don't have, aside from parallax, any grand gesture in the world of UI working for them, and yet it still works, and yet it's still consistent, simply because they've given it a ton of white space. That's the only reason, and it does work really well. every single font here is basically one or the other version of Inter, and no one bats an eye. I know this is Inter, but no one really bats an eye saying this is a bad font, because white space everywhere. Incredible. And you can kind of switch around with this. I am loving the way they've implemented Easter eggs right here, because you don't miss out on a lot of very key information simply by not hovering over your Easter eggs. You don't lose out on so much. If someone is truly interested, they will ultimately hover over something of the sort in these cards or any of these elements, but also you don't miss out on their key insights simply because you weren't looking for Easter eggs and you weren't hovering around. And speaking of things that hover around, did you notice once again, sticky element alert, this service's text block remained at the top, but as soon as you started scrolling, this kind of started remaining sticky on your screen and was retained regardless of where this content was going, and that's a really cool sticky effect that you can just get with CSS position sticky, and it's absolutely incredible. I have to get into it one of these days when we talk about programming, because why have we not talked about programming in such a long time? It's really weird, but they do retain it in the entirety of the section, which is absolutely incredible. Speaking of incredible things, I just remembered, when things get boring, and I've said this 100 different times, when things get boring, change the background color of elements, and I think they kind of do a good job with that. Keep changing the background color, and it does make for a really good, interesting UI. Otherwise, if this was white, we'd have been bored so quickly, and that's just an observation from my perspective. But also, the stickiness that we saw in services isn't the last time we see them make an element sticky. They kind of do it again and again in the section for commerce insights as well, because you get to see this section and wait for it. Yes, this does remain sticky even while giving you white space. So this bento grid for me serves double the purpose that you would want usually. When you're building out bento grids, a negative side of that is things are very closely packed together, which isn't bad, but also you're not left with a lot of space for white space, so it does not give you a lot of breathing room. But they've kind of gotten over that issue by giving you breathing room in a standard bento layout, but they've also taken one of their cards and when you actually start to scroll along, they've made it sticky for the entirety of that section, and what that does is it lets you keep this into view even when you're scrolling out, and this happens once again over here. And did you notice that two adjacent cards will kind of have the same theme color and they'll kind of retain it? That's also incredible to me, and they've retained the text block over and over again. And this is exactly why I'd say this site is doing so well in my eyes. Can I just add, the title for the brand itself isn't black either. They've taken the filter that you'd have for Figma or for CSS, and they've basically reversed they've, instead of setting this title to be a plain black, they've taken the title and they've reversed the color to make it an inverse of whatever's happening in the background. This is the basic negative filter you would see everywhere, or exclusion if you want to call it that. When there is blue, this is what exclusion does. When there is blue, it'll go take the opposite color, very deep orange, and it'll let that opposite color be the color that is actually effective with the title. When the color in the background is white, it'll change the color to black. When the color is gray, it'll change it to some other weird shade that's kind of the opposite on the color spectrum. But also, another incredible hero section that another incredible section that I wish would have been the hero section, but it's not. And it's quite disappointing because it does use a lot of parallax, and this is what people miss all the time. It does kind of offset on left and rights, and all of these lines have different scroll speeds, and it's taking bento, offsetting it, letting there be text, letting there be a lot of white space, especially with these images, because when you allow there to be a lot of left and right with your images, it's essentially white space. And this is definitely one of the prettiest, nicest sites I've ever seen. And I don't even want to get into the fact that they did not use a lot of typography variation with anything here. They basically took Inter, the major holy mother of all fonts, and they've kind of made it thin and taken all of the different variations that you can do remaining in Inter, and it has worked excellently without anyone having to come and say, wow, you did not use a second font, because white space for them works, colors for them work, and every single other element that you'd want to have, including parallax, which is fancy animation, everything for them basically works, which is why I have to give the site a 10 out of 10 ask Phil, even making it a testament at how you don't need to have a bunch of different fonts just to get things right. So that's where I'm at with askphil.com, and I think whitespace is the greatest credit here. 10 out of 10. The next site is supposed to be lovely because the title is Theo Loves You. Theo.b. I have no idea what this is going to do, but I'm hoping it does something good. Wow, this is a fun site. Theo.b. Scroll to look around. I think this is going to be a fun one because it does do very unconventional things, and I'm hoping that it starts working in our favor. So let's let this load up. Sometimes this is the bad part about some of these sites. Sometimes these sites will have the fanciest animations and it'll only last a second, and you get to miss the entire thing simply because you weren't present for a microsecond of the entirety. This is very, very weird as it's loading. We are back. I have no idea what the site does anymore. Alright, it has continued to load, and I think it's already loaded up. And the funny part about this site in its entirety is it works from not a world of hovering over stuff, not just a world of hovering over stuff, not just a world of I'll make this pretty and I'll make this look and I'll make this work. It actually works because they've got excellent color vision. They've just gotten an excellent insight into how to get color in a site, in video, in every format there is, how to make it work right. And I think color is the thing that's tying the site together. So that's just what I'm getting from the start. And even though it's very hover reliant, even though it's very reliant on the actual user putting focus on one of these sections, the reason it works so well is because you've got all of these different elements and they work really well together, and there is color going into all of them, and it's the thing that's holding everything together. So as soon as we start to scroll, very interesting, no vertical scrolling, only horizontal scrolling, which is fun, but you also only get to see the content when you kind of start hovering over things. And Theo wants you to get that perfect pair, check optician close to you, and start getting compliments. And you can basically see everything you would want to see, and it basically loads stores for you. So I have no idea what this site does until now, hoping it's an optician site, but also very interesting. And they've suddenly opened up Google Maps. No, I will not give you my location. Do they really have these many stores? That's very interesting. But do they actually have these many stores? Are all of these subsidiaries to this entire brand? I find some of this really hard to believe. This is very difficult to believe. Why would you give me a Google map, even if it's stylized, even if it has your signature red hearts? Why do I have a map? Is all of these locations of Theo stores? What is going on? I'm like, no idea what this says. This might be a way for people to search for opticians. I have no idea why. I think this is just general opticians. I'm very confused now. Can we see? These are very, very general opticians. They are not single brand subsidiaries or any of those. And it does give you really, really pretty highlights and really, really pretty abilities to see things. Although I am concerned at why you wouldn't show these collections up front. Are you not into the world of e-commerce? Is store locator the only thing you'd want to be known for? This is very weird, because I would have wanted to see more glasses if that's what you're selling up front. Again, this is a very small site, a very weird site. I still have no idea why you would have a site like this, and the only thing it lets you do majorly is find an optician. And I think these are glasses, but the way they've done video is really making it difficult for me to understand if these even are glasses, because you have to kind of hover over things and stay there for half an hour just to be able to find things out. Overall, on the one hand, they've done an excellent job by making some of these things happen. On the other hand, content-wise, the way they've implemented their glasses as the hero is missing completely. And that is exactly what blows my mind. I have to give this site a 7 out of 10 because on the one hand, very, very cool stuff. On the other hand, I had a really hard time understanding you sold glasses because the only thing you were showing was find an optician nearby, which is a mixed message because these aren't even brands under you. These are just random opticians, and you also had very interesting glasses to sell, but you didn't do that. So I am confused. The next site that we're talking about, equinox.space. I have no idea what this does. I'm hoping it does something good. If it doesn't, I will be sad. Have we seen this site before? Have I seen this site before? Am I just confused now? What's going on in this world? I have no idea. Equinox.space. Embark on an interactive story among stars. I am hoping this is a game-ish site, gamified, but also it does take a really long time to load, which makes me sad because I'm kind of waiting. As we talk about the hero section here, we have a simple video in the background running on its own speed. You have all of these different elements taking the space that it needs to. It's basically launching. Is it launching on my desktop? Why would it take such a long time to launch something on the web? No idea at this point. Are you opening up another link? Because this is a video and it's basically driven by parallax, cursor parallax obviously, but also you get to see things kind of be very, very weird around here. No idea what's happening. About and credits. What is Equinox? Credits, a bunch of these things. You can choose your controls. I'll go with mouse only. No idea what this does until now. Is this a game? Please turn on your sound for the best experience. No, I don't think I can do that. This is a game. This is a game and I have no idea why. So, hello. Looks like you hit your head. Can you walk? Every single time I try to avoid these sites, I get hit once again with very weird games. We had a weird Mickey Mouse game yesterday as well, and I've still not recovered from them making us collect 32 different musical notes, and yet there is absolutely no context of anything at all. Equinox is a space adventure where story unfolds as you explore and interact with the environment. This self-initiated project illustrates how our studio can help clients tell their own stories through immersive interactive experiences, making every engagement memorable and deeply captivating for their audience. You should have put this text somewhere else, preferably at the first hero section, preferably giving us a little bit more context. Not many people are going to go around digging just to find what the hell is going on here, read this entire piece of content without any highlights. Like, you've highlighted titles here better than you've highlighted your own main purpose, and I think this is very weird. Overall, it does a good job at showing you the story, but also it's a 3D render, which no one knew was a 3D render, and it's not showing the primary message of this helps our clients share their own stories as well. And this is exactly what makes me very confused as to why you would want to have this be present at all. This is definitely very weird, and I'm not going to waste even more time talking about games here because this is very weird. I have no idea what this is and why it is, and I'm just going to have to quit it now because yes, a lot of effort went into making this happen, but also I think we're not going to get much out of it. So, Equinox.space, very interesting concept. You should have put your description somewhere in the center instead of making us dig around for it. But also, I believe it's going to take a really long time for us to even see. They have used 3JS and Blender and SFX Houdini 3D immersive experience builders, but also this description should have been somewhere else, and the case study, which is a link inside of a link inside of a link, should have been present somewhere else, should have been a little bit better, should have been a little bit more visible. I am reading the case study for Equinox.space, and it does look very interesting, but this is very game-like. Like, you would have to be at a certain point invested in the story to even be able to see that this does what it does, drawing inspiration from video games, first-person journey to enhance immersion. These are the things that should have been somewhere at the start when you were launching and making us wait for half an hour. You should have put it there because it's already taking a bunch of time to launch. So, no idea what I'm going to do now because it takes a really long time to load. I do think I'm going to have to quit it. From the points of visuals, this is a 10 out of 10 because as a game, it's really, really pretty. But from the points of making user experience happen on the web, when people don't know what your site does, without your little case study, it's a very 5 out of 10 thing because you had to dig around to even find it out, and it does take a lot of time to load. So, overall, UI, 10 out of 10, UX, 5 out of 10. The next site, wow, would you look at that? I genuinely had this entire laptop all charged before the live stream started today, and 4 sites in, it's already bogged down. I shouldn't be complaining, I should not be complaining, but also I am complaining. Rhythmofnature.armadilloco.com. I have no idea what's going to happen. I am hoping for a very chic site, but also it could be not chic. So let's see what happens. They've started off with a really nice video in the background, which is incredible, and they have a bunch of really neat text happen. Begin journey. Oh no, there's audio. We can't play audio on live streams, you guys. We shouldn't be doing that. I am very sad at how slow this site is. I was really hoping things would be faster, things would be more interesting, but also they're not. So what are we going to do about that? This is really taking a really long time to load. Very weird. Can we hover one of these things? Can we get started? I have no idea anymore. Wow, very weird. I think a part of me wants to stay and find out what this site does, but another part of me has no idea, and I'm very confused now. What are you doing? Armadillo collection, Rhythm of Nature. Again. This is a very small site, and it tries to show you a certain element, but also the collection in itself isn't visible. It was very difficult to kind of point it out. And now that it is pointed out, this is a very random layout, because you have a bunch of text that's just packed together, and then you have white space thrown on there like it's some liability. Things aren't spaced apart really well, and if this is the entirety of the site serving as a landing page for a greater different shop, which is in fact missing. Wow, 2 out of 10. No idea what's going on here anymore. This is very weird, and it's very disappointing, because I was hoping for something interesting to even start happening. The last site for the day is actually very interesting, because I have seen it before, and it's really pretty, and it's really incredible. Explore our new era. I've already seen this site somewhere else, or I've seen it so many times, which is basically me saying I've seen this site before, and it's really pretty. You have to stick around for this one. Wow, more sound. Can't have sound. Please stop. No sound. This is incredible again. They do start with video, and video is a lot of what drives their site forward, but not only do they retain video, they retain the concepts of keeping white space there, keeping color schemes and gradients there. They've retained every single element. They've taken 3 colors as their main theme colors: light blue, dark blue, red, and even white, and they've kind of kept that consistent wherever you go. And I think this is what's common with them and the videos that Google makes. Both of them know exactly what their white space, exactly what their visuals look like, both the video teams and the actual teams for the websites, which is what makes their experience extremely seamless, no matter if this is a YouTube video you're watching or if it's a complete site, being very different. So I think that's something you do need to think about. Bringing agreements to life. Let's just see what happens, because wow, it talks about typography. I am instantly impressed. Did you see the parallax? Did you see the parallax on this one? This is the coolest site ever, because every single element I'm interested in executed perfectly. Incredible. But how we say it, this is really what's really good with animation, because as you start to scroll along, many of these are videos, some of these are animations. As you start to scroll along, you get to see a lot of motion happen in real time. Most of these are videos, you guys. As I said, there is a lot of video driving the site forward, and yet there is parallax too, and yet it does a really good job at showing you all of these elements. Then we talk about color, a system designed for dynamism. This doesn't happen with hover effects. This is actually one huge video that plays out. Other than the text, it's actually, I think the text may also not be the case. This is one huge video that plays out as you scroll. It's kind of tethered to your scroll bar, and the more you scroll, the more the video kind of progresses. But also the way they've made it happen looks very pretty, and it's taking every single element that you'd want to have, contrasts, harmonizes, adapts, lets there be motion in real time, just so you can see these things happen as you're working, and strikes careful. Did you see that there is even more parallax happening here? All of these elements coming together, make things look incredible. This is absolutely incredible, because it just works really well between focus and overemphasis. Wow. And it gets all of these different elements, most of which are videos, and it makes them work very, very well together. Words come in one by one, and they will let you take your time reading things out. Again, this is a very, very fast experience, and not a lot to say about the experience because it's primarily video, but the way they've integrated it with the site is very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And the colors are always there, and there is a lot of white space, and the white space is retained, and the font sizes and the colors and the areas and everything, they are very consistent, and they do look really, really pretty. Again, I love the way they've implemented everything. I want to say a lot of things, but I can't, because this is one very well executed video overlapped on a site with white space and typography and emphasis and color and animation, everything done to perfection. I am really, really happy with the way this site is. What do you think of this site? I need to have some comments in the live chat just on account of how pretty this site is. This is absolutely incredible. Wow, I can't speak English anymore. This is horrible on me, incredible on them. This is incredible as a site, because they're taking videos. This is one very fast playing video, you guys, and it still does an incredible job at showing you the entirety of the experience. Again, to someone who wants to find this stuff out, I think did you see that I am just singing high praises now. You can check out all of these elements individually, and you can see all of them on their own time, and you can kind of work with stuff from the left side, and it's absolutely incredible. Again, really, really pretty, and this is a true 10 out of 10 site for me, simply because of how well they've taken every single element that you need to have, and they've executed it well. And not only have they executed it well, they've gotten their own shapes and colors in their own design language, which makes you say, wow, this looks incredible. So overall, 10 out of 10 from my side for DocuSign.brand. This has been an incredible live stream. Today we talked about 6 incredible sites, what they do, what they don't do in the world of UI UX design. I hope you liked this stream. I'm here live every single day, 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time or 3:30 p.m. GMT. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, keep on designing. Good night.